Hey everyone, welcome back. I put out a poll on my Instagram account earlier this week to see what everyone was interested in learning about, and OBS was overwhelmingly one of the bigger topics that a lot of people want to know about right now, and a very specific question about how do I stream a virtual DJ set, either with pre-recorded DJ music to like live visuals or a live lighting setup, or with a live DJ and live visuals and live lighting. So I'm going to run through how I would do that. You'll have to excuse me. I had my wisdom teeth removed this week, so my voice is a little sore and my jaw's a little hurt and my cheeks are super puffy still. But that's okay because we're going to do this anyways. A disclaimer, I am not a professional streamer. I do not stream all that often. I have streamed in the past. I stream plenty of other events. So we're going to go through what I do and how I get my setup to work. If you have any specific questions, go ahead and feel free to reach out. I do plan on doing a more in-depth OBS tutorial sometime in the future, in between my lighting tutorials that I have planned coming up. But for now, we're just going to kind of run through this. I'm not going to go into any too much detail on a lot of the specifics or how to do certain things, just because I don't have time, and because there's just the amount of detail is so much. I will do follow-up videos to kind of cover up how to set up some of this stuff. But for now, let's go ahead and get started, and let's go through the hardware that I use for this setup to make it happen. Obviously, really important one is the green screen. My buddy Erwin is being super cool and letting me borrow this because I don't actually own one. And then I'll need a DJ controller and my DJ laptop and DJ table. And just to help a little bit with the green screen, you'll see later is I have a light over here on the corner of my table, which I'll be turning on shortly, and you guys will be able to see the difference between the light and no light and the kind of effect it makes on green screen and the chroma keying. Then we need a camera. I am using a GoPro Hero 5 Black. I bought this a while ago. It's been great. I don't have a need to upgrade, so I just use this. It has HDMI out and power in, and it works fine. I run that HDMI into my Elgato capture card, the HD60s specifically, because it takes HDMI in and HDMI out. It's powered through USB-C. It needs a USB 3.0 port to work, though. If you do not have a USB 3.0 port, it will not work, but the benefit of this card is it will do 1080 at 60p, which is great. I've heard a lot of good things about Magwell and Blackmagic capture cards. I have never used either of those, so I can't comment on that. Now, I run everything into Streamlabs OBS. I used to run just regular OBS. It was kind of a bare bones version of this same software, but I liked this more because there's a lot of extra widgets, there's a lot of extra stuff. I really like the way it looks and feels and clean, and it's super easy to get connected to any of the major platforms. Today I'll be going over just streaming to Twitch because I like Twitch as a platform. I think it's great. YouTube is a really good platform too. Never used Mixer, so I can't comment on it. I do not like Facebook. I think Facebook is technically behind the other three platforms. The quality I don't feel like is there, and neither is the audience, but that's a different story for another time. I'm just saying I prefer Twitch and YouTube over Facebook, though Facebook is popular for certain types of streams. I also like Twitch because they have all these really cool tests. You can run a stream test, you can look at your data rates, and they've got a really in-depth tutorial section on just diagnosing problems and kind of running through this. And it has been a lot of help for me. So we're going to come back here and we're going to go ahead and set up our stream. So now that we've got all of our gear kind of plugged up and ready to go, we are going to get our lighting software ready. So today I am using the GrandMA onPC software again. Obviously GrandMA is one of my go-to lighting controllers, so we'll be running through that. It sets up just like any normal show. You come into your setup, patch and fixture schedule, you add your layers and you add your lights. I just threw a bunch of random lights from a different setup that I used and kind of remodeled it for this one. Let me show you guys. And I got my visualizer there in the corner. So this is what I'm using right now. Like I said, you just go through. As you add lights and you exit out, they will appear in the visualizer, and then you can grab the lights in the visualizer and you drag them around to the desired position and whatnot. So I already have this all set up. I threw some truss in there. Like I said, I'll go over how to set up a stage like this in another video. The one thing I will comment on for this one is to get the visualizer to connect to the GrandMA software on the same machine. You need to come to this MA network control. You need to make sure you have a session running. In this case, I have just new show session, just defaulted stuff. It is the local IP address of my machine. And then you come to network configuration, and you're going to come away from console to 3D. You're going to click add, and it's going to add pretty much the name of your machine with the same IP address as your machine, except the session member is going to be off and it's going to be set to guest. So I always change it to administrator, just so that way I don't have any kind of conflicting privileges. And then you just right click this session on. You can see in the visualizer right now in the upper left corner, this little broken red heart means we're not getting any kind of control. So you come back over to this main screen and you right click session member, so it changes from blank to yes. You give it a second, it'll connect, and now I have control. And I can demonstrate this by coming over to my executor page right here, where I have just a couple of looks set up, some wiggly light looks, and just a quick little effect just to show that I do have real-time control over my lights. Now that we've got the GrandMA stuff kind of going, I'm going to go into the meat and potatoes of this and show you guys how to set up OBS. So to start, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to add all of our inputs. I obviously already have some inputs ready, but I'm going to show you guys how to do this from the beginning. So I have this whole screen rearranged so that way I have it set up how I like. So this is bottom right one is my editor window, which it shows what's being output, and it's kind of like a preview monitor or a live program monitor. Then I have my mixer here in the middle with all of my audio levels, and then I've got my scenes right here on the left all labeled, and then my sources in this big one up here. Normally I would mix this around, but for this video I changed it up so that way it's a little bit easier to see and hopefully makes more sense. So right now I just have this one called main screen, and it's literally just mirroring my primary desktop monitor. So I want to make this look a little more interesting, so let's add a new source. So if I wanted to make a new scene, I can come down here and I can click new scene to add a new scene. But I don't want to do that right now. I just want to add to an existing scene. So I'm going to come up to my source. I'm going to click on add new source. Click on new source, and I'm going to have all these options. I'm going to have image, browser source, display capture, game capture, audio input, NDI source, just all these different options. I haven't used any of the widgets yet, so I can't comment on any of those. But the common ones I use are video capture and window capture and NDI source and audio input capture, but usually it just automatically detects my mic and adds it to the mixer, so I don't mess with that too much. But window capture is what I use, because especially with the GrandMA, when I click on this window capture and I add a source, you're going to see I've got 3 sources already ready to go. I want to show you guys from the beginning, so I'm going to add new source. We're going to just do new, let's do new MA main. We'll click add source. Now you can see that it just makes a big black window that just fills up the whole screen. Well, I don't need that. I want to pick a specific window. I want my MA window. So I'm going to click this, and it's going to give me a list of all the open windows I can select right now. You can see that some of them are sharing the same executable file name. So I've got 2 for Streamlabs OBS.exe. One is the setting window I have open, and one is the background window that I've got. This ma3d.ex null is my full screen, and this one is the programmer screen for the ma3d. But you can see that there's a lot sharing names. So I like to use this Windows capture because it doesn't get the windows confused with each other. If you use the game capture and you try to select a specific window, sometimes it'll recognize these other screens as the same window, and it'll glitch out and it won't work. So I like to come in and select these. So this one I want to be GrandMA on PC, my main screen, not screen 2. So I click that, and you're going to see it takes a second, and boom, I've got my main window set up. I like leaving capture cursor on, and then I hit done. Now that I've got that, I just have the window and I can grab these corners and I can shrink it and I can stretch it and I can move it around and I can clip it to the corners and I can resize it to however I want. Now I'm going to click add again and we're going to come to our video capture device and we're going to hit add source. Again, I've already got my camera ready, but just for giggles, I'm going to show you guys how to do it again and call it new GoPro. I'm going to hit add source. There we go. I've got my HD60s capture card ready to go. The GoPro's talking to it just fine. It's a little glitchy as it tries to connect. I've got all these options, but like most things that I do, I just leave it set to auto. I can force a resolution with custom, so that way I can change the FPS or the resolution on it, but I don't want to do that. I just want to leave it device default, so that way I don't get any kind of weird scaling or anything like that. I just leave it as is, and then I hit done, and then I can come back down and I can resize it so that way you guys can see the full window. And now I've got this cool little setup where I can drag it and kind of make everything fit, and that's how I get stuff like this. So I just select a bunch of different windows, and you can see in my sources I've got all these different windows ready to go, and they're all up there. One thing I should mention that's going to be really important coming up is that there is a priority to how things are set up. So the highest thing on, or the highest source on my sources list will always be on top. So right now this video capture device is on top. So when I come down to my editor window and I drag my video capture device on top of these other screens, it will always be on top of them, like literally on top. So video capture, everything else, and then everything else below it. So I have this main display capture right here, and that is next in line. So if I drag it behind my camera, you'll see that it's disappearing because my video camera is on top of it. But it stays on top of everything else because it is second priority, or the second highest priority. And then the previs is the same thing. I can grab it and I can drag it around and it stays on top, but not quite on top of the other things. Then my main MA window and my MA2 screen. Screen 2 just is always on bottom. And you can layer these however you want, but it's going to be really important when we come up to the chroma keying that the video capture card is always on top, because when I key out this green, whatever's behind it on these layers is what's going to be visible. And I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate that in just a second here. So now that we've kind of gone over how to set up and how to do all this, I need to talk about OBS real quick. We need to come down to this. I'm already logged in, but I can click this button and log in, and it'll take me to a page where it'll show me my Twitch, YouTube, whatever, and I just click it and I log in and then I go through that. Now there's just a couple of settings we need to adjust before we can start streaming or recording. So we're going to come down to our settings menu and we're going to click settings. I leave, like I said, most things at auto, so I don't mess with too much. I don't touch anything on this general unless I need to. Sometimes there's an optimize button here that I'll use just to help make sure everything's good. I come to my stream, I'm streaming to my Twitch. I can enable multi-stream so I can stream to multiple platforms. I come to my output, and I just leave everything as is. The only things I changed on this window was I changed my encoder from my CPU encoder to my AMD graphics card encoder. I changed my recording path to one of my storage drives because this is a 2 terabyte recording drive that I can just put footage on and ignore it. It's not on my boot disk, which is only a lot smaller, but it's an NVMe drive. I changed the settings to high quality. I changed it to an MP4 codec just because that's what I wanted. I really should be recording as something else like a .mov, but whatever. Audio, I don't change any of the audio sampling. It's usually pretty standard stuff. And then on my video, I change my canvas resolution to 1920 by 1080 and my output resolution to 1920 by 1080. I left the downscale filter to bicubic. There's a lot of technical detail that can go in the different filtering options. Pretty much just has to do with how it scales resolution up or down and how it guesstimates what each pixel is doing. Not a huge deal. Usually just leave it at bicubic and you'll be fine. I just don't ever worry about it by setting my canvas resolution and my output resolution to be the exact same. So if there's any scaling that's happening, it's happening on the server side for whichever platform I'm streaming to. I leave my FPS at 30 because I'm just recording video tutorials. I'm not doing any kind of FPS gaming or any high action stuff. So 30 frames a second is just fine for me. It saves on storage, it saves on memory, it saves on bandwidth. If you are doing higher, faster stuff like streaming Warzone, you might want to run 60 frames a second because it'll make the stream look cleaner and a lot more professional, whereas with 30 frames a second, you will sometimes notice stuttering or skipping, especially if your local monitor is running at 60, you'll sometimes get frame skips. But that's, like I said, something just you got to kind of take on a case basis. So those are the settings I click and I'm good. So now that our stream is all set up, everything's configured, now we just need to set up our DJ booth. So I have my Grand MA software ready to go. I need to add my video source, which is going to be my previs. Click, and I need to drag it down so it's behind that and that. Then, so I've got my pre-visualizer up here. I've got just this little window in the upper right corner so you can see what I'm doing. I need to add the DJ booth. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to add my video capture device, add source. We're going to go video capture device, add source. And you can see I've got a video of me. So now I want that to be centered about that size, give or take a little. Stream this up. But the problem that we're having right now is that there's obviously a whole lot of extra space on the left and right. I need just the DJ table and the green screen. So we can either right click on the window in the editor tab, or we can come up to our sources and we can right click it up here and we can go to transform and we can hit edit transform and we can type in values that we want. So like 600, and this is just going to crop the number of pixels on each side. I already have one of these set up, so I'm going to close that one and bring up the one that I've got ready to go. So that way it's already centered and cropped to the DJ table specifically. And so now we can see that I've got just the DJ table framed up and the green screen. Now we need to go in and we need to edit it so that way we can see exactly, or so that way we can get the Luma key going. So I'm going to come to the video capture device we're using. I'm going to right click on it. Once again, I'm going to filters and then apply a new filter using this little checkbox or the plus box. We're going to look for Chroma key. Click Chroma key. I'm going to hit done. Now it's got a bunch of settings already built into it. You can see that with the Chroma key on, it's already disappearing in the back. Let's go ahead and do this though, so we can see the whole thing. Transform, reset transform. So we can see that just the green is being keyed out, but we can also see that it's not being keyed out really great. Like there's a lot of kind of like artifacting on the bottom. We can fuss with the settings, or what we can do is I can put this back there. I can turn a light on it. So what the light will do is it'll help normalize the green across the whole canvas, and it'll make it a nice flat green so that way it gets keyed out easier. So we can turn that on and we can see now that we've got a little bit nicer of a chroma key going on. So we're going to go ahead and go back to our cropped version so that way we can look at my ugly face. And ta-da! I now have what looks like a DJ setup. I've got my DJ booth and my stuff ready to go. It's still a little off, but that's... There we go. It's a little better. So now we can see I've got this nice little keyed out green screen with all the lights running in the background. And I can come up to my MA quad view and I can turn on these looks, and when I come back to my screen, you can see that all the lights are moving and it looks pretty freaking sweet if you ask me. So yeah, so that's how we set that up with the chroma key. Now, just something a little extra that I like to run over is how we do the audio for this. So I'm in my MA Live. So in my setup right here, I'm going to click Add New Source, NDI Source, and I'm going to come down to my laptop. Now, on my laptop, you have to download NDI Tools, which I don't have open, but NDI Tools. If I come to the interwebs and we find NDI Tools and you click that, you just download this NDI Tools pack and it'll give you a bunch of options for some really good stuff that you can use to stream. And so what I have is my laptop is connected to the same internet as my streaming tower. So now I can add a NDI source, add source, laptop source, click add, and now I've got my laptop, which is just so happens to be this record box background. Now I'm going to do the same thing again. I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to transform, because I like doing this thing where I just display the song titles and the waveform as kind of like a DJ surround. So I can put that there, and instead of just having the DJ table and my laptop, I can kind of overlap that, and I don't know, I think it looks kind of cool. You don't have to do this, but I do it sometimes because it looks nice. And down here in the mixer section, you'll see that I've got laptop BG, and that's just the laptop because it's also sending audio over NDI. So I can adjust the levels. I kind of already set the level to somewhere I want. So now when I get up and I come over to my DJ controller, I can now play music, and you can see the volume levels coming up and down. As I move that, you can hear me doing my shitty scratching. I move the keypads, and you can see everything going on like it's supposed to be, which is pretty cool in my opinion. And that is more or less how you set up a chroma keyed background. So I just switched over to another one where I have an image. I just put an image in the background, and that image is just displaying over the chroma key, and I can move it around, and I'm using that same layer principle I was talking about earlier, where I've got the image below the capture device and then my main display below everything else. So if I was to change this around, you would see now I've got this main display behind my camera and not the image that I want. And that's pretty much the gist of it. I am going to cover one last thing really quickly, where we talk about how to get Resolume graphics behind this stuff, specifically my graphics. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to go over this really quickly. So in the Resolume advanced menu, you're going to see that I've got in the upper right corner the NDI source, which is my output. So it's outputting NDI through the thing, or through my machine. And I can full screen this and do whatever I need to, but since we're just going to use this as a background real quick, I'm not going to bother. So when I turn my camera on, you're now going to see the graphics behind me. And if I come over to, and so now we can see that I've just got some graphics running behind my stuff, and I just set that up using Resolume and NDI output. So that is going to be pretty much everything for today. I hope you guys found this useful and informative. I will be covering more of this in the future. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions. Thank you guys for tuning in. And like I said, I hope you enjoy this.